Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our meeting for this month. Tonight we'll be talking about using Git for connecting to someone else's repository. This is part 2 of our Git tutorials. Last month we did the intros, how to commit code to your own repository. Now we're going to be talking about how to commit code to someone else's repository. Our speaker tonight, Kevin Laux, will be taking it from here.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So basically last time, since we talked about kind of the basics of working on your own Git repository, we thought for the meeting tonight, we'd do something where we kind of work collaboratively. And the idea we came up with was we have our RTPSUG GitHub site. We've made a fork of that we're going to work against, where essentially people will be able to add their own image and some information about themselves and be, a part of that site. It's RTPSUGMembers.github.io. And I'll start off by, if I had my mouse, getting into a recap of kind of the basics of Git. So last time we created a local Git repository with Git in it. What that's going to do is it's going to take a folder that you're currently in, the current directory. It's going to set up a .git hidden folder that has a bunch of metadata and information about the files that are in that path. And basically that's got information about all the changes, as you have different branches, what the differences are between the different branches. And that is where all of the information that makes Git happen resides. Another way, so you can do Git init to create a local repository, but you can also, if you've set up a repository remotely in GitHub, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps repository, once you have that remote set up, you can do a command called git clone. Git clone will take that repository, and you'll see the command here. It's git clone and the path to the repository. Once you have that set up, it'll just copy all of the files and settings that you have there down to your local system, and now you can start working on it. So let's say on your local system, you make some changes, or there's changes remotely. You want to do an update to those changes. Git pull will pull the remote changes down to your system. Git add will stage changes. So you've updated a script that you're working on. You're going to do git add, the name of that script. It'll stage it. Commit will actually take that stage change and put it into a point-in-time commit for that repository. And then git push will push it out to the remote repository. That's kind of the flow of how things will work when using Git. I know Mike sent out a refresher. I think was it Thomas Rayner who put that together? That's a really good thing to go through, just to kind of recap on the basics. Because we're not going to be able to go too deep into it right now because we kind of already did that. But mainly these commands, git checkout, git add, if you know those, you're pretty good as far as being able to work and do Git around. There's a ton of extra stuff you can do in Git, but those are the basics.
So I'll just add, so he has on the screen git clone and the web address. If you're unsure where to get that web address, if you are in GitHub, for example, and you're in your repository, it will be the green button that's over on the right-hand side. It'll say clone or download. When you click on that link, it will show you the web address, and you can simply click the copy to clipboard button or manually copy it. And that's the address that he has up on the screen there that you would put into that command.
Yeah, so it should look something like that. So when we do the tutorial I have set up, we'll go step by step through all of this for cloning the forked repository we're going to create down to your local machine. It's completely step by step. You guys should be able to follow along pretty well. And this git clone will be part of it, and where to find it, where it is on GitHub and stuff like that. The tutorial is very specific to GitHub, but you guys should definitely be able to follow along pretty easily. It's not changing slides for me. So tonight, getting away from just working by yourself in a silo, we're going to get into a bit more into forks and branches. So I kind of threw this together the other night. I thought this kind of gave a good representation of what we're doing here, or what is going to happen when you're working in a repository. Is there's going to be somebody else's repository. You're probably not going to have permissions to it, or you're not going to want to work on their repository. You're going to want to create your own copy that you want to work on and do your own changes to. And maybe at some point you might put those back in the original repository, or maybe it's just going to be your own version that you're going to keep forever. And so I kind of set up this image as, hey, there's their repository, and then there's my repository, right? So they're going to have their master branch where they're committing all of their production changes, the things they want to go live, and they might have where they branch out to add a feature. Maybe there's bug branches, people can do feature branches. It's basically the same thing, just different terms for what it is the intent of the branch is. Are you going to add some functionality? Or are you going to fix something that's broken? But it's essentially the same thing. It's a branch of the code. You make your changes, you test your changes, and then you commit them back to the master. When we do a fork, essentially all we're doing is, it's similar, it's a branch, it's a separate version of that code that we're working on ourselves that is now in our repository. We have control over it. We can, give people permission to it and things like that. So basically what's going to happen when you do any type of branch or anything like that that's separate from the master that you're working on is you're going to create that branch, you're going to check it out, you're going to make your changes, you're going to add them, you're going to commit them to the branch, and then you'll do what's called, and this is always threw me when I started, is you're going to do a pull request. So you would think you would push it to the master. You're going to do a pull request, which says you go to whoever has control over the master. If it's your own repository, it should be you, and you're going to say, I want you to pull these changes into master. And then it's going to go through a process of you submit the pull request with information about what changed, and then someone approves the pull request and merges it into master. So I have one more graph kind of like this that's going to show specifically what we're doing tonight. So in the top is the RTPSUGMembers .github.io, and it doesn't really look good on the screen with the transparency. The main repository, which if you go to rtpsugmembers.github.io, you should see the main site out there now. We're going to fork it so that we have our own repository, and we will be able to do whatever your username is, .github.io. If we change the name of the repository to that, it will come up in GitHub pages as your own page that you can test on and stuff like that before you do the pull request.
So do you want to stop there and get everybody to that website first?
No, because I'm gonna have to go out there to fork it and stuff anyway. So,
okay.
So they'll see it. We'll make a branch. In that branch, we're going to create a markdown file that's got the information we want to show up on the web page, and we're going to either point to an image that already exists. There's a couple sample images out there, or if you have your own image that you want to use, nice picture of your face, then you can copy that in and commit that as well. So that'll go to a branch we'll create called add member. We'll do a pull request to get that into our master branch, which is where we'll be able to test it and make sure that it's showing up on the page. And then we'll do another pull request to pull it into RTPSUGMembers, and either Phil or Mike or someone will be sitting there approving pull requests for, hopefully, if everything goes as planned, all of our images to end up on the RTPSUGMembers fork of our website. Does that make sense for everybody? Does anybody have any questions about that, how it's going to work or anything? Okay.
So I would just say, if anybody has questions, please surface them up, because what we're trying to do is not leave anybody behind. So if you get lost on the first couple, you may have a hard time keeping up on some of the future ones. We'd rather stop, keep everybody together. So just a reminder for the people online, we're hanging out in Discord and Slack. Joel Sallow is there helping us out tonight. I think Josh is also available, Josh King, myself, I'm online. So if someone is online and you have questions about what we're talking about tonight, head on over there and we'll do our best to help you out.
Someone said something about the username before the domain name. There's a feature in GitHub. Maybe I might have had something typed wrong. I'm not sure specifically what you're asking, but there's a feature in GitHub where if you have a repository named the same thing as, your username.github.io, then that becomes a GitHub page. And so you can go specifically to that site, and it will generate a page using, it's Jekyll, I think is what does it, right?
Yeah.
Bill?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to RTPSUGMembers.github.io, you'll see Phil created one, but he didn't put an image there.
But it's
Phil.
updating now.
But yeah, you should see our page. And our goal is, so we have our team section that we have from the regular RTPSUG site to have an our member section that looks similar with everybody's picture in it. Let's see here. So I have a test account that I've created, which I can't even see it because all this WebEx chat stuff gets in the way. So it's RTPSUG test. So when we're doing the example, you're going to see RTPSUG test as my username. Pretty much anywhere where you see it says RTPSUG test or RTPSUG test members, because I think I changed it because I was working on the tutorial in a couple different places, that you're just going to substitute with whatever your username ends up being. So to start out, I'm going to come out to RTPSUGMembers GitHub page. I don't know if it helps. If I should put this in the WebEx chat. And from here, we're going to go ahead and create our own fork. I'm going to show you real quick by clicking on the side here where it's got the number. Kind of some information about this fork. And you can see here in yellow, it shows this is actually a fork of rtpsug.github.io. So that's the main site that we have. And we created this as, something we could, mess around with, and we don't have to worry about it breaking or anything like that. But you can also see as part of this fork, there's other people who have forked this as well. So it's a fork of a fork. And so it's just everything that we're doing with these forks started from whatever commit was the last commit on the fork that it came from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true.
So you basically have a point in time when you do a fork, you're taking all the files that are there, you're forking them off into its own repository, and now everything is going from that point in time. So when I did this RTPSUGMembers fork, it was a point in time from the original RTPSUG. I haven't, merged any of the changes in or anything like that. So one thing to be careful of is in a fork, you can get behind the changes of the original repository. And we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but there's ways that you can, basically get yourself back up to speed with the original fork. What we want to do to get started is we're going to create a fork. And so if you click next to, well, let me show you two things before we get into that. So that's how the forks look. If I scroll down to the bottom here, so if you ever go into a Git repository on GitHub, Bitbucket, and that kind of stuff, if you have a file called readme markdown.md, I can't see here. Here it is. This file here will be rendered on the page. And so I created a markdown file that's kind of got a tutorial that's going to walk us through everything we do tonight. So that gets generated if I scroll to the very bottom of the page here, as a preview at the bottom here. And you'll see step by step everything we're going to do tonight, including, where you need to click in a red box, and all the different steps of how this is going to work. So I might go back to this and reference this. I kind of have some notes just to make sure I stay on track. But you guys should be able to follow along on your screens and make sure you're on the right step. If I skip over something, feel free to call me out and we can discuss it. Or if you don't, you get lost or something.
I think one of the other things is also with people online and stuff like that. I know there were some people chatting online, but feel free to open up your mics and ask questions if you need.
Yeah. So to start for creating the fork,
Right now,
So you click in this box.
there are no PRs against this. Okay, so no PRs.
Yeah, nobody can, well, they should be able to do pull requests against it.
No, I'm not seeing any right now. They're open.
No.
No, I closed it. I merged it. So they're working.
Yeah, because Phil and Mike have.
Oh, I just saw. Okay, okay.
It went through and went back.
So it looks like everybody's already starting to fork it. So you just click on the fork button. Make sure it's on the left. On the right, you'll get a listing of all the people that have forked it. On the left, it'll create a new fork. And you'll see a change here. Actually, let me go back so you can see this. It went from RTPSUGMembers / RTPSUGMembers.github.io to RTPSUGTest, my username, RTPSUGMembers.github.io. So I have this happen sometimes as I'll go to a repository and I'll be like, oh, I'm RTPSUGMembers. How can that change in there? Well, it's because I'm in, my own fork of it or something like that. That username on the beginning, a lot of times will let you know you're not in the original one or something like that. So where I was going to show you guys. We made that change, or we've made the fork. If we want the GitHub page to work, we actually have to change the repository name here. So under here, it needs to go from rtpsugmembers.github.io, which is the original repository name. It now needs to be our user account name. So this one is going to be RTPSUGTest. Yours is going to have to be whatever your username is.
In GitHub.
So effectively, what we're doing here is just basically adding it so your own GitHub account will be there. And so that is there. So it's not a true requirement to do it. You can do some of this like all offline, but you won't be able to see and render the pages kind of locally kind of stuff. So some of this is just that. So I want to just divert from that. So you can do some of this, and because there's a website, we're kind of modeling that. So you can basically go to that site itself, but it's not a requirement at that point. So don't want to focus at that point. Because if you have a site that's already on GitHub, some of this won't work in that fashion.
So I had mentioned, I think in here, at one point, I think I had it as optional, because if you already have your own site, then obviously you can't do that. Like,
Right.
if I have, my main account, kevinlaux.github.io, I'm not going to want to replace that with this necessarily.
Yeah, so that's kind of my point. Sorry.
Yeah, please see. Yeah.
So I should be able to. Now I can go to rtpsugtest.github.io. I see our forked version of the site. And
So if you hit refresh there, you should see Phil.
what's that?
Oh, you can hit refresh button there.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Phil's back.
We'll see Phil later. You want to check it out? We'll see if it worked.
Go to the second.
Oh, there it goes.
Hey.
Oh, he's scary.
Now Phil fixed it. Okay.
Submit a pull.
So Phil has guaranteed that it is working as
Sounds
planned.
happening.
What is this?
So next step. So we've created our fork. We now have our own repository. Like Mike had mentioned earlier, we need to, in order to clone our repository, we need the correct URL for that. So here you're going to see HTTPS, GitHub, RTPSUGTest, and our whole repository name with .git on the end. So we're going to copy that. We're going to go out to, in the tutorial I mentioned creating this folder.
Want to make that bigger?
Yeah.
So this is probably an awesome time to say, you really need to be aware before you do this, what folder you're in. Because wherever you run that git clone command, it's going to make a subfolder of whatever you're currently in at your command line. So if you made this in C Windows, that's where your repo is going to be parked, right? So before you do the git clone command, make sure you understand where you are.
BWD.
Yeah.
Where are you?
So effectively, you're going to git clone the repository, and then if you don't put anything after that, it will copy that into the current folder. Or you could put the folder name at the very end, and it'll create a folder with that repo in it. So you could do, define it to be something else, but I will default to the repository name.
Yeah, so what a lot of people do, if you're kind of new to Git and you're not sure about organization, because it can get confusing, a lot of people will make like a Git repos folder. And then in that folder is where they will clone. So that would be Git repos, repo name B, repo name C, repo name D. So they'll all be stored in one folder.
So what Kevin's doing, it appears, is he's creating a separate folder to clone the repo into it.
Yeah.
Correct?
So,
Yeah.
And if you follow along, I kind of, maybe you don't have the ability to do this because, I don't know, don't have space on C and you want to do it on D or something like that. I kind of did it as an example here is I create a folder, C repo, I did set location, you can CD into it, whatever. But what's going to happen is when you're in there, the main thing is you're going to do git clone and you're going to put in that path that we copied from GitHub. So now
At that point, it's basically you creating that folder called, RTPSUG test, GitHub ISO.
So wherever you clone, you're getting a folder with your repository name, not the username / part, just the part after that. And the contents of it will be everything that was in your repository. So if I come in here, you'll see all the stuff here, all the folders, all that kind of stuff. So now this is the local copy of that repository. So all the changes we do here, we'll have to eventually push up in order for them to.
Local copy of your forked version of.
Yeah. So, so we went through, we created our folder, we did our clone, we went into the repository. One thing that's really important that you might get caught up on is if you stay in C repo and you try to do a git pull or get something like that, and you don't go into the repository folder, the .git file, the hidden folder that has all the information about your Git repository is inside of that folder. So if you're in C repo and you start trying to do Git commands, you're like, I don't have a local Git configuration in this location. So you actually have to get into the repository folder and then you can start doing git add, git push, all that kind of stuff. So you might see that error. Let's actually bring it up real quick. So like if I do git add.
Yeah, but only if you're outside of it. Sure.
You'll see this fatal not a Git repository. So you need to make sure that you CD into the repository. Now when you do git add, there's nothing to add, but it knows the information about Git because of that local .git folder. So let's see here, next step. So now what we want to do is, typically you don't want to make changes to your master. A lot of times it's easier to do. I do it a lot of times. But what you want to do is, because you're going to have something that you know is working. We know the RTPSUG test site is working. So we don't necessarily want to commit stuff to it directly. We want to put it somewhere else. And in the case of what we do for the RTPSUG website is, we'll actually do like a Docker container with Jekyll in it against that branch we have locally, test it, make sure it works before we do a pull request into the main RTPSUG site.
Do we have a pipeline that deploys?
No, we don't.
Yet?
I was actually looking at doing some of that stuff the other day, but we don't have anything like that.
A CD pipeline, Untitled CI for publishing to the master branch for
the RTPSUG
website.
Yeah, that's a little off topic.
Sorry.
So
That's part 5.
what we want to do now, though, is we want to create that branch where we're going to make our changes. So in order to do that, you do git checkout. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong here. If you say git checkout and you just say the branch name, it will change to that branch if it exists. I think when you add the -b, it is going to create and change to that branch. Am I correct there?
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
No one's saying I'm wrong, so.
so if you try and check out to a branch that doesn't exist, then it'll throw an error. But if you do a -b, it will actually check out to it.
Yes.
It'll jump into it. But if you don't put the -b, it won't let you check into add member.
So if a branch exists, you've already created add member, you do git checkout add member, that's the name of our branch, it'll switch over to it. If it doesn't exist, you'll do that -B and it will create it and then check it out. So you see here it says switch to a new branch, add member. And so now all the changes I'm doing, and actually let me bring this up in VS Code just to kind of show you guys what that looks like. See. So if you're in VS Code and you have the Git extension, it'll actually tell you in the bottom left-hand corner what branch you currently have checked out. And I think that's really useful. I mean, a lot of times what I'll do, I don't want to put a requirement on VS Code or anything like that for this, is I'll be using VS Code, so I'll see what branch I'm in and I'll see all that information that it gives me, but I'll still go back to the terminal for doing all my Git commands, because I've just found doing the Git stuff through the UI in Visual Studio Code is extremely slow. But anyway, that's just a kind of like a visual way in VS Code. You can see what branch you're actually in. So now that we have this new, well, let's go back to our RTPSUG test site. Okay, never mind. Never mind. I haven't done it yet. I haven't pushed it up, but I was going to show the branch, but it's not there yet. So we're going to start making changes to this. The things we need to change are we need to create the markdown and we need to add our image. So if we go down to the README, you'll see there's a template under /members template.md. We're basically just going to copy that into a unique markdown file, unique named markdown file. Do your name, do something that's hopefully nobody else does. Try not to do like 1, 2, 3 or anything like that, but probably do first, last name. As long as your name's unique, it should be okay. If your name's not very unique, add a random number combination at the end. So what we should end up seeing why isn't it pasting for me? All right, so what we should end up seeing is, the template I created, which is, John Smith, sample.jpg, a website URL, which can be any website you want people to go to. Please do appropriate websites, your LinkedIn profile, a slogan and some stuff like that. We will have to add this image into a folder that exists in this this path. I think it's just called images that Phil created. If you do not have an image or you don't want your image up there, there are a couple of sample images. So if you see under /images here, hopefully that's big enough for people to see, or /members, there's this images folder. And so Phil's already got his image up there. We have 6 samples out there you can choose from. So sample, sample 2, sample 3, .jpg, and you can just put that in there. You don't need anything else in the path there. So go ahead, you'll do your updates there. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. What is my... So
Somebody was asking about, should you be creating the add member branch as well? I think you should. So one of the objectives at this point is to, be this as a template environment and for you to kind of do the work, and we'll pull your request. So if you want to make your local branch whatever you want it to be, because that's the whole point, is that it is your branch at this point. You can call it whatever you want. Then eventually we'll then take that, branch, and we'll merge it all the way back up into master at that point. So you can make it whatever you want at that point. So just want to say.
So there's no limits on the naming of the branch that you're using locally.
And if you got more, typically with big, like you brought up the idea of like CI/CD pipelines and other things like that, and in environments, sometimes people will create the branches based upon like issue names and use all those kind of tags and stuff like that, and it will auto close things. But that's deep in the weeds, and that's version 5.0. But so effectively, the branch name at this stage of the game is just anything you want it to be.
All right, so I've gone through, I've made my updates, I put in my name, I put in the, so I copied this image in here.
That's dope.
Well, technically I'm.
That's the title?
What?
Is that your title?
No, that's what I am.
That's what you do.
So the image, your Twitter handle, I don't think you need the ad on there. A website, I don't have a website to put in there.
Your dad.
I don't know what my LinkedIn profile is, but whatever that, username is, you can put there, your job, whatever slogan you want. Save that. And I'll make sure I'm not skipping a step.
So I think at this point, just to understand that you're putting in some artifacts. You're creating a branch. You're going to create some other artifacts, be it JPEG files, some other artifacts. You're going to create some code. This is basically an MD file, a markdown file. So you're going to add some code, and then eventually we're going to get this all the way back up to somebody else's repo. What can we do with it? And kind of see it visually. So effectively, you could put a script there. If you wanted to put into your branch some other just random code, well, it's up there and it'll be finally put there. It's something appropriate we can put there. And so that's the kind of the objective here. We're kind of wanted to give an opportunity to actually do some work, something you can visually see, something you can do, and a place that you had actually, let somebody pull, your code into.
How would you describe Markdown? .md file. What is Markdown?
A basic in HTML format.
It's what?
Simplified HTML to me.
It's a simple text format so that it can then be rendered out into multiple things. Because you can take Markdown into any number of other formats at that point.
Yeah, you can convert it.
Well, think of it the other way around. Is that, hey, there are renderers that can take a Markdown and build a Word document. Take a Markdown and build an HTML document. Take a Markdown and build PDFs. And so it's the raw that you can then throw out some, and it has some basic formatting, so it can do bold and all that kind of stuff, and underline links.
Markdown is pretty wicked. It's pretty sweet.
Real quick to stay on track. I'm going to go back into VS Code just so if you are working in VS Code, you can see some of the things. You'll see, if you look under images and you look under members, you'll see that we have these, the files we changed or updated or added even are here. It shows you, I believe that's basically just saying, hey, this is an unstaged change that you have. Over on the side here, you'll actually see, hey, these are the changes that I have. They're not staged at the moment. You can individually add them to be staged, put a message in there, commit them, all using the UI. Like I said, I don't like to use that because it tends to be very slow. So what I want to do now is I want to take those changes I did and I want to stage them. I want them to be part of the next commit. So I'm going to do a git add. And you can just do git add period or git add star, and it'll add all of the files that have been updated in your repository. It's probably a better practice to go through and list out the actual files that you changed, because if there was some random change in a file that you don't actually want to be committed, you don't necessarily want to add that to it as well. So I'm going to put the markdown file that I did, and you'll see on the left-hand side as I do it, it just updated into stage changes. And so I staged that one too. Next step, we've added them all. We need to create our commit. So git commit -m. We're going to put in our message, added Kevin Laux as a member. So you'll see those changes just disappeared because they're now part of the commit. So I'm now at essentially like a snapshot of all of the files in this repository has been created. And the next is to do our git push. I don't remember having to do that before. Do I have that in the tutorial? Oh, I think that's why it didn't give me the. I created the branch locally for add member, but I didn't tell it where I wanted it to push to necessarily. And so when you do your git push, let's see if this works.
No, I know that, but.
Which in this case is the add member upstream. So that will be the add member branch in the remote repository.
Yeah, so sorry, Kevin, Mike was just asking, the add member after the origin there is whatever you called your branch itself. So whatever your branch is called. So here he called it add member. If you called it, my project or whatever, that's the name of the branch. That's what you're effectively right here, you're git pushing to the origin, your branch. If you had just like a generic that didn't have to do anything, not a particular branch, you just wouldn't put anything there, just push the whole thing. But I just want to push this branch. So that's what you're trying to do there. To origin and then add member is the branch that you're trying to push.
Yeah, it doesn't like me right now though. So I cleared out my cached username and password and stuff that was being used for authentication with Git. So the problem was that I have a different account, Kevin Laux, which is I normally use for Git. I have this other account, RTPSUG test, that I was using just for this tutorial. And I was still logged in with the old account, and it doesn't have access to the RTPSUG.
And you probably didn't do it through SSH keys. You probably just did it through Credential Manager, which authenticated you and then just gave you a PAT.
Yeah, so I always just do username and password. Right. I never do the SSH. So
which would probably be the way to do it if you're switching between different identities on the same machine with Git.
I've been told it is, but I haven't messed with it a lot.
I think
if you're doing two different identities, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but if you're doing it against two different repositories, it becomes a little bit easier.
I don't think that's a common scenario, though. I think most of the time it's going to be
probably not.
Your user.
So anyway, after doing that change, when I went to go do my git push, a pop-up comes up that says, hey, what's your username and password for GitHub? I put that in, it authenticated, and you'll see here it went through and it did created the new branch. So if I go back out to RTPSUG test, what I should see here is now we have this branch that's been added called add member. I can go switch over to that branch. I can look at under _members, I now have the kevinlaux.md. If I do that under master, I shouldn't see that because it doesn't exist in that branch. It only exists in add member where we created it and checked it in. So now, what I want to do is, I'm pretty good with all my changes. I think I did it right. I checked and saw that they're actually, that markdown's there. I can go in and look at the raw format of it. Everything looks good as I want it. I can go see that my image has been checked in. It's there. Big old picture of my face. I can go back to the original, the main folder for the repository, and I can click on this button here, new pull request, from the add member branch. And this is where you're going to set up what it is you want to pull from and what do you want it to go into. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see RTPSUGMembers, RTPSUGMembers.github.io. That's not where I want to do my pull request to. That is where we forked from, right? I want to actually go into, and we'll see a ton of these now because there's tons of forks going out there now, RTPSUGtest.github.io. And you'll see the second you do that, the format of this changes. It says, hold on, you're doing a pull request in your same repository. We don't need the repository name for both sides. So what branch do you want to go from and which branch do you want to go into? So I want to go from my add member branch into master, right? And you'll see it even pulled in my commit message from before, added Kevin Laux as a member to this pull request. I'm not going to add anything else on there. And I'm going to say create pull request. So now we've created a pull request. And what Phil showed us a little bit ago is he was looking from the RTPSUG member site. He was accepting pull requests and merging them. We're not going to do that on our repository because we own it. So we're the ones who are approving the pull requests and merging. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go ahead and merge and confirm the merge. And what we should see, if I go back to code, oh, I missed a section there too. In that pull request, there's a small little gray box that says delete branch. Typically, you want to do that because you're creating the branch to do a change or fix a bug or something like that. So the branch is only going to exist as long as that problem still exists or that thing that you're changing still exists. Once you fixed it, you're going to do your pull request, and when the request is pulled in, go ahead and delete that branch out because all that work you did is now in master and there's no reason to have that branch though. When you have a new feature or a new thing to fix, you'll create a new branch at that point. So now I'm under branch master. I should see if I go under members, I now have kevinlaux.md. Go under images, I have kevinlaux.jpg. And if I go to our test page, our members, an image that's way too big, but you see my part of the members page. So Phil might reject this because the image is too big, but we'll see what happens.
There we go.
So
Did we go refresh?
So let me, I want to do this real quick. I want to bring this back to the graphic I had before. Here's what we've done so far. We created a fork. The fork was RTPSUG test, RTPSUG.github.io. We had a master branch there. We created a new branch called, I put it as add content here. It's actually
Add member.
I called it add member. We made our changes. We did a pull request into our master branch, and we are at this spot right here, right now. So RTPSUGtest.github.io has our image in it. We want that to be pulled into the repository we forked from, the one that Phil has control of, we don't. And so what we're going to do is we're going to submit a new pull request to that repository.
The master branch of the repository.
Yeah. I don't know what best practices for that. Like, I know we can do a pull into a branch in that repository. There might be some sort of a test branch or development branch in that repository.
So what's the question? Sorry.
Do you have people submitting PRs to master? And is that what they're doing?
No, typically what you like, you had brought up the idea of, hey, it's some CI/CD kind of thing. So you'd have some CI/CD pipeline merging into master. So that would merge. So it'd be some CI pipeline moving into master, and you then do this idea of like pulling stuff like into other branches. And so hey, I'm going to pull this, and then so then you would then try and promote into your branch, and then the CI would pull from you. You'd submit a pull request, yes, effectively to master.
Yes,
But it would now
essentially-
be pulling from master to master.
But tonight, though, what we're doing is submitting PRs into the master branch of RTPSUGMembers.
Yes.
Yeah, so typically on a best practice,
In this
if you're
way.
working on something else, you would pull into a branch that people could run some testing on, do some stuff before it goes into production, and then they would then pull it typically through some sort of automation where there's testing involved into master. We're going to do a new pull request, and we're going to go straight into the master of RTPSUGMembers. So, and you'll see it automatically sets it up for that. Like we did before, is we actually switched to RTPSUG test repo. We actually want to keep it here this time because we want it to go to RTPSUGMembers. We're going to their master. If we had our own branch in there to mess around with, we'd send it to that. We're coming from RTPSUG test and our master. So we're going to go ahead and create a pull request there. Phil, hopefully will accept this,
Which one?
the request that I'm putting in there.
So if you do a refresh,
Do you want to share your screen so you can show it from your side?
Yes.
so we have some members. Anybody have any questions at this point?
Your CI/CD pipeline should not make changes to the master. That's
Oh, is that
true.
what he said?
That is true. That's what Joel said, and I think I agree.
What did he say? Something about source or something?
Like your CI/CD systems don't commit directly to master. You write tests, and you as an owner approve the pull request into master,
Yeah.
essentially, but not the CI/CD system itself. That should never have right to master.
All right. Look, we got people.
Yeah,
We got
nice.
some more people. And Mike's picture hasn't shown yet, and Joel's hasn't shown yet. So some of this just hasn't appeared yet. That's been done, but it's just GitHub at this point. Hasn't rendered the page again yet.
So did you see my pull request? Did you want to show us the?
Okay, this is your.
It's not alphabetical.
Actually, no, it's not. It's just I don't know how it's gonna sort it. It's something with Jenkins. The way
You guys started with A.
he was
Nice.
open.
Nice.
All right, so we kind of showed at this point. So from here, we then see that RTPSUG master is pulled from his test, from his master to you. You can kind of see back from other ones. I think I showed at this point. You can click on the files that changed. You can see he's done a bunch of other stuff. The picture itself, we can't really see it inside this UI, or we can download the picture. Can we?
You view the raw view file? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, the horror. Sorry. So we can go review it.
Run a test on the
Internal
image,
stuff.
make sure it's
We
400 by
can,
400.
in checks, we can comment on it. It'll then send it back to him to say, hey, do you want to do this work? Hey, we're going to comment on this pull request. So now this pull request now has some other stuff. We can then comment back and forth saying, do you want to do this? Please make these changes, blah, blah, blah. We can then also submit for review. Or we can simply say, yes, we want to do it. I guess so.
Now, if it feels like, you know what, your image is too small, fix it. What's the process going to look like?
So actually, that's fine. We could do that.
If that's
And I
something we
can
want to do.
reject it, and then you just submit a new one.
If that's something that, I mean, I don't know if we have a lot of time for that, but is that workflow? Can you explain that workflow?
So essentially, the way I would understand that it would work is he would reject my request. I would go through and I would.
So what you would do at this point, the pull request is still open. Okay. And so what I would then do, you could then actually here, not that. So at this point, I could make some changes. You get a notification back into your GitHub at this point. We're using GitHub that, hey, I've made some an update. So if you look in your GitHub, you should see that, hey, I commented on your pull request. you would then make some more updates. You would then, so when this account does the pull, it's the current version wherever you are. So you could keep doing changes to kind of here.
But he-
I'm going to pull.
Right. He would have
this
to make
master
changes.
branch.
He would have to make changes. Kevin would have to make changes on the master branch in his RTPSUG test
Correct.
branch in order for that to go through. So he may have to make
Yes.
a change in his master branch.
So at this point,
Directly.
effectively, so you want to make a new change, add a new file. So just quickly add a new file and then push it up.
Oh, crap,
so
I
just
forgot.
go- Or just copy the MD file and then just rename it. Just make another copy of it. So effectively, if I refresh this page, there'll be 3 files changed. Or just copy and paste your image.
Single PR.
So in the same PR, you did a PR, but the PR is still. Did you push it back up?
What's that?
Did you push your change back up?
I haven't pushed any changes yet.
So make a copy of your picture and call it something else. Kevin 2. And then just push it back up.
I gotta do
Like a
a
kid.
poll on mine.
So does anybody else have any other questions or kind of the scenarios we're kind of talking through? So I think it's a good question to do at this point. Are you comfortable?
Oh, no, I'm totally lost.
So how can we help you?
So exactly, yeah. So please ask questions.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's all on my end. It's virtual machines not connecting to internet, so I had to re-download PowerShell on Mac OS and all these other sweet disasters.
People online, do we have any questions online?
You working?
I think so. So
How are you doing?
once I've made the new template, then what?
Once you make a new template and then what?
The template.
See, that's why I like Joe.
Markdown.
The fourth repo that you have at
Yeah.
the bottom of that is the README with the step by step. You can see where you are and just follow along. We can help you, but
Kevin, did you do that?
So I just pushed a new file to master.
So you pushed a new file. And so now you see at this point, is this now changed from 2 to 3?
Members. Yep, there it goes.
So he made a change to his master. Okay, and so now I would have to accept both of these changes. Okay, so as you said, hey, change this. And so now, hey, no, it's still wrong. There are too many files here. This is.
Sure.
And so at this point, all the things that are in my master is what we will pull at the time we do the merge.
And that's
So
where your tests come into play, where if you want something that comes in with 100% passing, you run your tests at every moment, especially within a PR. So if someone submit a pull request, you run tests against their pull request to see if, for example, one test I would run is that JPEG file 400 by 400, right? And if not, then decline it or say no, reject it or something of that nature.
And then it just
that
leaves it
concept.
there.
Correct.
So let him redo his
Yeah.
change, and then you go kick it off again, rerun your test, and once it all passes, then you can move to the next stage.
Correct. Yeah.
And so effectively, like you said, is nothing changes at this point. Or he can now make changes, we can go back and forth, and then finally confirm the merge. Now, granted, there's going to be 2 files there, nobody's referencing the second file, but now there are 3 files that were now merged from his branch, which is test, into RTPSUGMembers. So we have some other pull requests to do. Then,
So,
you are approved, sir. Sir Ed.
so since we forked off our own copy of the repository, and obviously the main repository has been updated since then. And I can see here that mine is 22 commits behind the one that was forked from.
Yes.
How do we update the forked copy?
Good question. So this is exactly kind of, I did that here.
Or Kevin, do you want to show your screen and do that?
Phil would be the better.
Unless-
person to
okay.
do
So
it.
at this point here, now I have this. So I have a copy that I added when I did a pull request at some point. And so kind of,
Okay, so you've cloned it to your local machine here.
yeah, so you see here at this point, this is my account, So this is not whatever. So this is cancel, quit. Okay, so now you can say, get that all. And you can see at this point, it is getting copies of everything that's upstream. So now there are 2 things upstream. Origin is me. Actually, we'll go back to kit L. So you can kind of see the branch master is me. my master, which is effectively origin, remote origin, and remote upstream is RTPSUG master. So that's my upstream. And so I can then quickly here, I want to pull from the master and upstream. And I'm now going to, it now, boom, 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 gets me all the files that are now in master, in the upstream master. Okay.
Get fetch and then get pull.
So now here's the thing. Now, right now, my local repository has now been synced all the way down. I went and pulled from the upstream, but my remote, my personal remote, is now out of sync. So I now need to do git push to push this stuff back up to my remote.
Okay.
Does that make kind of sense?
It does make sense.
Keep
except
rocking.
it's-
Yeah.
You sort of flash past several settings there that,
Well, let's talk about those.
okay, so the upstream setting,
Upstream.
you were looking at your.
So
data
kind of
values.
the way I kind of see it is upstream is this. So
No, I understand that.
Okay.
That's not what I'm asking.
okay,
You were looking at your config file or whatever.
sure.
Okay. How did you set that to be the upstream value in that config file? Did it magically happen when we cloned the forked copy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
yes. It magically happened because we used the GitHub. We used
Mhm.
GitHub to create the fork,
Right.
thus creating an upstream.
Okay.
And then when we cloned our local,
Mhm.
not our local, when we cloned our personal GitHub account,
Mhm.
the upstream came with it.
Okay.
If you wanted to establish your own, you can do git add upstream.
That's fine. My next question is, how did you get to where you could see those configuration items you were just showing us?
Oh, git config minus L
Okay, minus L for list. Okay.
minus list. Yeah.
Okay.
Git.
Oh, it says git config.
So this,
Oh,
so the part here, also in this is a lot of this is also global stuff as well.
you highlight the part that you reviewed. I want to see it as well. Yeah. So remote origin.url.
So there is the remote. So this tells you where you are and what you're pulling in. So here's what the repo of origin. So effectively, origin and upstream are actually just random words. It's like a standard practice. What upstream and origin are. You could call, I've seen people use remote.u or whatever.
I've gotten myself in trouble doing that.
So
But for instance, I don't have a remote.upstream defined in my local copy that I cloned from my forked repository.
You don't have a.
There's no
I have a remote.origin, which points to my GitHub, the forked copy I made in GitHub. But I do not have a upstream that points all the way back to the.
you don't have this.
Correct.
So git add remote or git remote add. I think it's
What is
remote.
that?
What is that?
Git remote. To add into yours manually. So git remote add. That's a good question. Really config.
Yeah, git remote add. Then we're gonna call it up.
Okay, yeah, I understand I could add it. Okay, I was just confused because I thought it should have automatically happened.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
I actually don't know, and maybe Joel will know. You need to add remote. Yeah, we did that, but the question is why is it potentially not on his? My understanding was once you forked it, it automatically put it there. That was my understanding. No, I could absolutely be wrong.
You'll need to add the remote. Yeah, git remote add upstream.
Okay.
So did I not add it at one point? Oh, forks, they don't automatically add. Great.
You look at the chat. I just pasted in the one-liner to add the upstream URL. That
Yeah, you can kind of see there, I have remote up is that same thing.
upstream. It's just a name. Okay, so you can call it whatever. You can.
Yeah, you see there on my thing, I call it UPP. It can be any word you want. but the standard practice is called upstream.
Got it. I can call it twiddle sticks. Perfect.
Twiddle sticks. All right, who else wants to be added? So I know this was I hope that you got kind of some of this added, and this is kind of like a practical example of, using, this is 2.0 of using Git, kind of the first time we just hear Git, kind of get you started and how to add, remove, clone, that's it. And then here is now, hey, trying to work with somebody else's repository. This is, not very PowerShell-y, but it actually is, it's kind of a useful.
One thing I like to do is look at popular GitHub repositories that are a good open source repositories for PowerShell projects in the community, and look at their pull requests and look at their pull requests essentially, and get an idea of how they're treating PRs. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, and see, here you go. Look at this. Josh King patched Joel Salaho's file because Joel's image wasn't right. So in Git, you can see at this point, it says, hey, he removed this. This is the removal line, and here's the line that was added. And so we're going to approve these changes.
They have to be PNGs? That's why mine's not working.
No,
I think mine's a JPEG.
it can be whatever, but the image, the image value has to be whatever the image file is. And so if you use the PNG, you have to use a PNG. But if you didn't use, whatever you used, it's the name of the file.
Can you recap those last 4 or 5 commands in Notepad or in chat, Phil, that you were running in order to get that? The git fetch and the git promote add.
So I am not the best in Git. I know
Config minus L.
I know how to make things end up working, but I do not know the correct way to do things
Right.
sometimes. So one thing I always go back to that I like about Git is you can pretty much always just start from scratch. If your fork is out of date or behind on commits, you can delete your fork and do a new fork.
Right.
Now it's caught up. I know that's not the correct way to do it, but it works. If your local repository is for whatever reason behind your remote repository and you're having issues, git pull should pretty much do it, but if you're having some sort of issues because you changed the file and you can't, stash the changes and commit and then merge them, you can just delete the local repository, git clone, and be back to whatever your master is. And if there are changes you want to save there, the files you changed, save them in a temporary directory, delete the Git repository, do a new clone, and then, paste them back in and then Git push them. So there are elegant and good ways to do it if you really know Git, but you can kind of brute force some of this stuff just by re-cloning your repository or reforking the repository.
Or there's a command called git reset hard origin and master.
So one of the things to kind of understand is the gist of what Kevin just said there is, if you have big problems, you can simply just wipe your local repository and start again. Effectively remember that Git is a distributed, file system, code base. And so there's a remote copy of somewhere else, be it local, there's a remote copy of the content. And so if you get all bundled out, you can absolutely just wipe what you have and start again. And so, or you could try and fix what you have, but and effectively what I've done, and I don't know if you can see it here, let me see if I can. There are some repositories here. Hey, I have 3 copies of my presentation to the PowerShell on the river. Hey, because I screwed this one up, or actually I think I screwed this one up, and then I screwed this one up, and then I was like, I eventually went to that one. So effectively, I have 3 local copies of some upstreams back to wherever. And so the whole point being that these are all effectively the same local repository, all different times, but they eventually became this one. But it's just as easy. So there's some garbage inside of this one, there's some garbage inside of that one, but they all have the same origin.
And Phil, do you want to show Git Explorer? Because I thought that was a pretty cool tool that Jonathan had showed us.
Jonathan told us about Git Explorer. That was pretty cool.
I found that the other day. It's pretty wild.
And actually, I think we're kind of off topic, so I'm gonna stop the recording. But, you know, obviously we can still continue showing stuff and.
So there is, yeah, there you go.